All right, we make our glorious return to the studio. Ballin' and Brawlin' is back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give a warm round of applause to my glorious co-host, Mr. Justin Strenad. Welcome back. It's like he's returning from war. The season is over. Hell of a season for our friend Justin. We'll get a little bit more into football some other time. Who cares about football? With the card coming up this weekend, much more important than Justin's football career. UFC heads to Saudi Arabia. Friend of the program, big Turkish Alish something. Cut that part out. Obviously the UFC trying to do a lot more with Saudi this past year. So, even though it's a fight night, kind of looks like a pay-per-view, and it definitely kind of looks better than the following pay-per-view. UFC 312 in Australia stinks. So this is, excuse me, this is the best card. This is the best card we're getting for a while. Justin, what do you think of this as a fight night, right? Because like that term, everything's not created equal, right? Like you'll have some fight nights. We got the Holly Holm main events like pretty much every other month. I think we had a Mackenzie Dern headliner not too long ago. Like fight nights can mean a lot of different things. This obviously looks more like a pay-per-view. What do you think of this card, and what do you think of the UFC going all out for a fight night?
Yeah, dude. First and foremost, it's good to be back. Glad to be back with my ball and I'm rolling man here at Hebs, along with our glorious fans. As we continue this chase to surpass Rogan on the number one chart. But dude, like you said, I like the UFC getting involved with Saudi and Turkey and Riyadh season because, bro, it really we've seen what Turkey and Riyadh season have kind of done with boxing. Like, bro, they're making fights happen in boxing that would not happen if it wasn't for the Saudi money and stuff like that. So, I mean, hopefully this money and this backing is going to allow the UFC to expand even more, and hopefully it can get things done like a John Jones versus Aspinall that everyone wants to see. I know that the UFC definitely has the money to pay a guy like John, but hey, I don't. Maybe it takes some Saudi money to get big, huge fights like that done. So, excited for it. It's definitely a better fight night than most for sure. Izzy's a guy who I think I saw a stat. He hasn't fought in a non-title fight in 12 fights or something like that, or 10
I
fights.
think it's 12 or 14, something
Yeah,
ridiculous.
something crazy. So it's gonna be awesome. But then we got Shara Bullet versus MVP, and we also got Sergey versus Rosenstruck. So 3 great fights over there in Saudi, and yeah, let's get into breaking them down. What are your initial thoughts on the card?
Yeah, dude, as you said, I mean, or I guess as we both said, it is crazy that this is a fight night, right? Like those are 3 like fights that you would usually see on a pay-per-view main event, especially Izzy. I mean, seeing him on a fight night just doesn't sound right. He's been
Yeah.
headlining. Those were all title fights, so obviously those were headliners, and he's headlined some pretty huge cards. He's been a top 5 star in the sport the last really 5 years, right? Ever since he got the belt, which we saw with our own 2 very eyes. So it is very weird to look at him in this spot. And, obviously he's lost 2 in a row. He's lost like 3 out of 4, I guess, going back to that first Pajeda fight. So he looked invincible for a very long time, really ever since he moved up and fought Jan Blachowicz back in, I believe that was 21, like March of 21. That was his first loss in his MMA career. And then since then, he's had, obviously some lackluster performances. Even when he was winning, the Vittori fight, the Cannonier fight, like some very forgettable performances. He just seems a little different right now, man. I've listened to him speak a lot in the media. Really, this past year, like I think UFC's, I mean, kind of the same as a lot of professional sports, I guess, but specifically like in the UFC, confidence plays such a big part, right? So like he lost a lot of fans because people were saying he's cocky, he's cringe, he's all these things. And, probably rightfully, I mean, I've said all those things about him too, right? So it almost seems like he's just a little bit more comfortable right now. Not just like where he's at in his career, but I guess just where he's at in his life. Like I'm sure he's comfortable financially. He's made a ton of money in the UFC. Again, this guy was headlining some pretty big time cards. And when you headline that many cards, that's just a lot of money, especially for the UFC. So I've really liked everything I've heard from him. He's kind of been poking fun, at some of these losses after the DDP loss. I don't know, man. It's hard to put into words, I guess, but he just seems like he's in a really good place mentally, a really like good spot in his career, and you're almost playing with house money at this point, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's too much he can do to elevate his. I shouldn't say that. Obviously, if he wins this, he gets back in the title picture and he, reclaims the belt. Then that kind of elevates him into a new stratosphere. But I think he's at a very comfortable spot in his career. He's a multiple time champion. He's defended the belt 5+ times, as we just said, 10 straight title fights. He's accomplished a ton. So, again, he just seems like he's maybe a little bit, calmer coming into this fight week than in years past. I guess, we'll talk a little bit more about him because you grew up for, the three people that are listening who don't know this. Justin, a huge Izzy fanboy, kind of dragged me along into it as I was getting into it. Then, classic, Stranad fashion, the tides turn, some rough waters, and he jumped ship immediately. I don't really know his thoughts on Adesanya at this time, but what do you think of Izzy's had like just kind of a weird career? This guy, bro, after he beat Costa, like we were saying, he's going to be better than Silva. Like he was undefeated. He really brought over this, I think ever since him, all these kickboxers now are like, I could go compete in MMA. And for a while, people were saying the best base for MMA to become like, a great UFC fighter is kickboxing. And we've seen, a ton more of those type of guys come into the sport. What do you think of Izzy's career? Like who knows how much longer he has left, but not necessarily where do you rate him all time, but what do you make of his career since it has been, not say all over the place, but it certainly had its peaks and its valleys.
Yeah, bro, you have to say it's been very impressive, dude. When he first hit the scene, it's like, yeah, this guy's a great striker. He's got the kickboxing background, but it's like, can he really take his game to the next level and become this champion? Because I mean, all the way up until really he fought. I mean, even Gaslam tried to mix in some wrestling a little bit, but it's like the guy showed over his title reign and things like that like his wrestling. I'm not saying he's a good wrestler, nothing along those lines, but he's shown good enough footwork and takedown defense in his game to make him the fighter and have the career that he's had, bro. So it's very, very cool to see that. I think the UFC has seen that also, and that's why you see them bringing over these kickboxers more and more today, because obviously that's a very entertaining fight style. It's something the fans want to see. But if these guys are able to get that takedown defense and kind of figure out a way to keep the fight on the feet, these guys have a huge advantage against most just MMA strikers or wrestlers that are going to stand and trade with these guys. So I think it's been very impressive, dude. But I think we've seen some of his tougher fights are guys that have been able to get him down and kind of wear him out in that way. Like even Jan Blachowicz did, and then we saw obviously DDP do that as well. But I mean, shit, he's had a great career. He's definitely a Hall of Famer. I think this fight is, it's still big in many ways because he wins it. Like you said, he's back in the hunt. He's not fighting for the title if he wins it, but he's back in the hunt.
Maybe.
Yeah, you never know. It depends on who's champion and things like that. But like, I would say he's had one of the better careers of any guy coming over from kickboxing, a certain background, definitely. So yeah.
Well, so obviously Imavov is like, this is kind of your classic up and comer versus an established former champion. Imavov, he's been around for a little bit, so we're not calling him like a true prospect per se. But what are your predictions for this fight? Because I think this is a fucking fascinating matchup, man. Like Izzy, after he lost to DDP, even going into that fight, part of the narrative was like, okay, like what happens if he loses? Like where would he go? That's back-to-back title. A lot of people were saying he shouldn't have even gotten that title fight. It should have been Strickland. He gets it. He loses. He looks decent. It's not like he looked like he was washed, but and he made very clear, I'm not done. But he's like, what, 35, 36? I think people thought, all right, maybe this guy takes some fun, interesting fights. Maybe he moves up to 205. There aren't too many huge names in 85 or 205, but he fights like maybe the toughest contender, like a guy who, if he wins, he'll probably be next for the belt. So obviously, the top of 85 is a little crowded right now, but if he wins, I think his next fight's for a belt. What do you make of Nasruddin Imavov? Is that how you pronounce it? Because I really hadn't seen, other than the Cannonier fight, and I think like Strickland way back, which I just watched, like um, I don't know. He doesn't have like that much hype around him in the meet unless you're like a true MMA fan. But what do you make of this fight? And how do you see this matchup going?
Yeah, so no, dude, Imavov's a good fighter. I've been watching Imavov, I think, since he fought Buckley. I want to say is like I've got to
Yeah,
see a lot of his fights for some reason. I mean, even the fight nights. But dude, he's
as
on a
you're a
pretty good.
diehard, dude. You always say for some like, you're supposed
Well,
to be a diehard.
no, I am. I see most of these guys, but I'm just saying, the guy like Imavov, who's not the biggest name in the sport, a huge fight for him coming up, obviously Saturday. But dude, he's a good fighter. He can mix it. He can kind of do everything, to be honest. And I think what people aren't talking as much in this fight, and I don't know how big of a factor it's going to play because I think Imavov is a pretty big dude for the division, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
when he rehydrates on fight night, like he's a pretty big dude. So it'll be interesting to see if he can. I think he's going to need to get a hold of Izzy and get Izzy down in this fight in order to win it, because I think my just to come out right now, I do think Izzy's going to win this fight. I think Izzy will win this fight on the feet, probably just by points. I'm not going to say by finish, but I've seen in Imavov's past fights him kind of fatigue later in the fight, and I think it's critical for him to take early rounds against Izzy, and I think he's going to need to do that, either clinching Izzy, putting Izzy up against the fence, or getting takedowns. Because obviously, if you're just going to stand on the outside and in exchange with Izzy, I don't in a point fight 5 rounder. I don't know how that's going to go, but yeah, my initial lean and my pick for this one is going to be Israel Adesanya via decision over there in Saudi, and yeah, bro, I think it's going to be a great fight. What is your take on this one?
Yeah, I've kind of been back and forth. I think originally I was definitely backing Izzy, which is kind of the opposite of his last fight. Like I was all in on DDP, and I kind of flipped at the last. Well, I guess I flipped like a million times, so I have no ground to stand on. But I don't know. Like the more I think of how these fights usually play out, like I think people usually like Imavov's 28. Like he's just entering his prime right now, so people kind of underestimate how much improvement you can make as a UFC fighter as opposed to like another sport. You're not really making that big of an improvement, when you're 28, 30 years old. But in the UFC, like he's just now coming into his prime and he's put on some super impressive performances, right? Like the Joaquin Buckley win has aged so great, right? Because he's
Yeah,
moved down and now he's like in the title picture at welterweight. Like the Strickland fight at the time, how much like it, Strickland had just lost to Cannonier in a super close fight, but like then Strickland goes and beats Izzy, and you're like, wait, so how good is Imavov if he just took Strickland 25 minutes in a competitive fight? He goes on and fights Cannonier, who's taken his losses for sure. But do people forget what Cannonier showed up to fight Vettori looking like? I mean, that guy looked like he was a 5-time world champion. Everyone like the steroid allegations after the Vettori Cannonier fight, like that was a pick'em, and Cannonier gave him life. Vettori hasn't fought since. That was a year and a half ago. So then in Cannonier's next fight, that was against Nasruddin, and he looked really good in that fight. You could say not a good stoppage, whatever, but he won the fight. So this guy's legit, man. And people are making it seem like, oh, he'll be able to take down Izzy. I don't know if this guy's grappling is like as good as some people are making. I could be wrong. I've only seen a couple of his fights, but like, I don't think he's going to be able to take down Izzy and control him. And you said, Jan and DDP were able to do it. Those are great wrestlers. The game plan for Izzy for his whole time in the UFC was get a hold of him, take him down, and like not many guys have been able to do it. Even a guy like Vettori had some success. We were just talking the other day about him taking his back. Like I think in like the third round, he almost got him out of there. But like Izzy was able to scramble. He's able to get back on his feet. the George Foreman saying, man, the George Foreman saying, it's hard waking up at 5 a.m. to run when you're sleeping in silk sheets. You always wonder with these fighters once they get a little bit of pocket change. Like, I don't know how you're sparring on a Tuesday,
And I think
taking.
Izzy's got a little bit more than pocket change now, dude.
I meant for me compared to me, pocket change. You know what I'm saying, but um, I always find it tough, like thinking about how the sparring is different from when you're like looking for the belt when that's all you care about, and then like once you've won you have this money in your bank account. I do think it's very tough to still train the same way, but even more so I find it tough in the third, fourth, fifth round when you're in a dog fight, because I could really see this being a dog fight. No pun intended, a little bit of pun, right? But ah, I don't know, man. I think Izzy, we could see. I do think it'll be a really good fight. Um, I really want to pick Imavov, but I'm just not going to. I'm going to pick Izzy. I think he'll win maybe like a fourth round TKO, like an accumulation of damage. As you said, maybe Imavov starts to slow down a little bit, and then we see Izzy go for the kill. But as I mentioned, man, I think fighting, it's like a lot, it's all mental for these guys in a lot of ways. So I have liked everything that's come out from him ever since his loss to DDP. I do also like that he's not ducking anyone. He could very easily not fight anymore. He
Yeah.
could very easily fight, a fun fight where he's making a little bit more money, where he's a co-headliner in a pay-per-view. He did not have to take this fight, and that tells me, that he still wants it. He
Yeah.
has not liked, again, this guy has gotten a ton of hate these last couple years, really since really dating back to after he fought Jan, which was kind of a bad performance, and then he had some other blunders in there as well, even when he still had the belt. So, I think a motivated Izzy, a contender Izzy, is a dangerous fighter. I really want to see the return of Israel Adesanya. I'm going to pick him to win. Again, I think it'll be a super close, competitive fight. I think it'll be a war, and I think Izzy still got it. So I'm
Yeah.
going with Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, dude, I agree with what you said too. Like I expect it to be a competitive fight, and I'm interested to see like just in the first round, like how Imavov, like how their physical statures and the strength kind of carries over into this fight. Like I want to see what it looks like when they get into some exchanges and things like that. But
And
yeah,
it's such
dude,
a unique style. You're 100% correct. I really wonder what like this first 5 minutes is going to look like, because like again, Izzy's just like a really hard guy to compare to. Like
yeah,
this guy who he's fought Cannoneer, he's fought who did I just say before that?
Buckley. He hasn't fought anyone like Izzy, bro. He fought
Yeah,
Brendan
because there aren't
Allen.
really guys like Strickland. Oh, yeah, Brennan Allen. But yeah, so I'm curious to see how these first couple minutes play out. Also, he's a little susceptible to leg kicks, So Izzy, obviously one of the best leg kickers in the sport. We'll see if he can, build up some damage down there. But
Bro, but
um,
I also want to say that, like, I feel like as Izzy's gotten, like, especially if I think you go back and watch the DDP fight, bro. Like, Izzy's not kicking like he used to kick, and I don't know if that's,
you're 100%
I don't
correct.
know if
Yeah,
that's just the body's kind of taking its toll, and he's kind of like doesn't want the damage anymore. Like, because bro, in his run, especially, I mean, it's even the boring fights that he had that he won against like some of the guys. He would just spam like kicks, and just the volume alone of the couple landing and the guy not being able to touch him because he's 6 feet away from him. Like, and
yeah,
that won him fights like on his come up, and it's like you look at the guys that have given Izzy problems. It's guys that we know are clearly stronger, more physical guys than like Izzy's. Like he's a pretty big, not pretty. I would say he's a solid sized middleweight. But bro, like for him to go up and fight Jan, I know people think that was like a disappointing performance, but bro, him versus Jan from a size standpoint is like I don't even think it's comparable, bro. Like I think what he tried to do there was like I respect the hell out of, because I don't like I think the strength in size advantage in that fight was so one side, like, and we knew that going in, but it's just like, dude, for him to still have the balls to go up and do it, I thought was really cool. But a guy like DDP, even a guy like Pereira, who obviously beat him, is we all know those guys are a lot stronger and more physical than Izzy. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Imavov's size and power compare to Izzy's.
Bro, that's why it's so like, do you remember the conversations we were having about this guy around that time when he was fighting Jan? Like,
Oh
bro,
yeah,
he was minus 250. He was minus 250 in that fight. Like, nobody cared about size at all. Like, it's
yeah,
easy to look back at after and be like, oh damn, like Jan in the ring was probably 25 pounds heavier than him.
yeah,
Like, and Izzy was doing the whole, and that's what I'm talking about with how like, cocky he was, how arrogant he was. And when you're beating everyone, nobody cares, right? But then when you
yeah.
start to lose, it's like, oh, maybe
People
this
were
isn't
acting
so.
like it was going to be like a pick'em if he fought John Jones back then. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
yes, that's what I'm saying. And then Jan just is able to like, kind of, out physical him, right? And he even had a lot of success on the feet. That was kind of a weird fight. But and then after it ends, you're like, oh yeah, maybe a 30-pound size difference, like that maybe size does matter,
And a
right?
guy that can strike with you, like a guy in Jan who's capable of striking with anyone, really. Like
Yeah.
that was looking back at it, that was a bad matchup for Izzy, to be honest. Like,
Yeah,
but I get it what he was doing. Like, it made sense for him to go up, take the chance, because
but he could put on some weight.
but at that weight class, it's like, bro, he figured he could probably point his way to a win. You know what I mean? Stay on the outside, move around, and do what he did it his whole time at middleweight. But it's just like, bro, anything he landed on Jan wasn't really doing anything. And every time Jan landed on him, it was like a freaking wooden barrel, bro. It was whap. Like,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
bad.
All right, yeah. So I guess we're both riding Izzy. I'll say fourth round TKO. You're
I'll go.
saying decision, but
Yeah, I'll
I
go.
could see. I know I could see a lot happening in this fight. But yeah, moving on. So like we said, we got a couple fun ones in this. We got Michael Venom Page moving up to 185 against Shara Bullet. Shara Bullet, one of the fastest rising stars in the sport. Hasn't been in the UFC too long, but he's been making waves ever since. He was a hyped prospect when he came into the UFC. And again, he's performed pretty well. I think his last fight that kind of blew him up a little bit more, right? The double spinning back fist. One of the coolest finishes I've ever seen. And it certainly got recognized as such.
Bro, did you see the video of him with Nina? Dude,
Yeah.
he kind
I've
of
been
like,
watching it on repeat for the last couple days. Yeah.
bro, he kind of hit her like hard, bro.
Bro, that was not real. Come on. You're falling for
You
there's
don't think
no
so?
he like did like some spinning shit, right?
Yeah, but like not like he wasn't doing it like full speed. But I mean, bro, I think it seemed like he did hit her. It did seem like it.
I've seen actually it was him as well. I think it was for his last fight. He was like she was holding the bag and he was just like wailing away and like she kind of like fell over. I mean, let's not give Nina Drama a free shout out. That's the last thing this freaking cast needs right now. But yeah, I mean, clearly he's a wild. I mean, you've heard the story. He like assaulted a guy and probably like there's a guy like kissing his girlfriend in public and he like beat him to smithereen. I don't know if you know this. Like he has like an assault charge on his record. Um, but again, that's good for the fighting career, I guess. But yeah, he's fighting MVP. As you said, this is great matchmaking. MVP kind of in a weird spot in his career. And as I just said, I really no one's talking about him moving up. Like he's tall and lanky, but he's not like a huge welterweight.
No,
And I know he's done some things outside of MMA. He's boxed. He did bare knuckle versus Mike Perry, which is like the ultimate side quest.
quick shout out to Bare Knuckle, by the way. The Philly card last weekend was insane.
Banger.
Yo,
Banger.
Bare Knuckle's on the come up. I'm not kidding.
It most definitely is.
If
And
it's sanctioned, I don't know how that is sanctioned. It's like you're lucky to come out with a broken jaw, bro. I don't know how they sanction that stuff.
I mean, I don't know. Have you seen UFC fights? Like, I don't know how that's sanctioned either. It's just two people fighting. It's really not.
Bare Knuckle is like, bro, there was like 8 absolutely devastating KOs the other night.
Dude, and then you see, because Eddie Alvarez, his face like blows up after every fight. Bro, he's like him and Steve, and it's all just like former UFC fights.
Did you see his jaw? Did you see the X-ray of his jaw?
I didn't see the X-ray. I saw his face was a balloon after.
Yeah, the whole thing cracked. shattered like right
It
here.
looks like he's got like two baseballs on his cheek. I mean, he looks like a
Yeah,
chipmunk. It's ridiculous, but
yeah,
um, I don't know. That's the game they play. Yes, bare knuckle certainly on the come up. Mystic Mac, everything he touches turned to gold. So MVP, like, I don't think he's a huge like welterweight. I was very shocked to hear him move up to 185. Um, but this is like, the ultimate striking fest. MVP, obviously, he lost to Ian Gary this past summer. As I was like, just said, kind of a weird. He waited till he was like 36 to go into the UFC. Somehow you're 36, and like it looked like he had never, practiced wrestling once in his life. He got taken down so easily. So I'm not sure if that will happen. I think this fight means a lot more to Shara Bolt. Like, I don't see MVP as like a true contender right now, right? He
yeah,
already jumped and he's moving weight classes. He only fought twice in the UFC. He's already moving up. Like, I don't really, this guy has kind of a difficult path to a belt. Bullet, they're moving him along, not slowly. I mean, this is a huge jump up in competition for him. So, um, I don't know, man. Like, I kind of just wonder with MVP, like he looked better than Ian Gary. Like that second, he got taken down, he got controlled, almost submitted in the first. Second round, he was piecing him up, but like he almost just like he'll wait for 2 minutes, then he attacks and throws like a combo, and then he waits. Like he has a very weird style, a very entertaining style, which is why this is kind of a weird fight because it's like this contender versus this guy who's probably on the back end of his career. Um, I don't know. I don't think there's anyone in MMA who beats MVP in a pure striking match, right? Like we thought very highly of maybe not Kevin Holland's stand up, but like we thought very highly of Ian Gary's stand up, and like it was not even close. He was beating him to the punch every time. He was touching him up. Maybe he wasn't like cracking him, but he certainly got him a couple times. How do you see that? What do you think of this matchup? How do you see it playing out? Because this is a real interesting fight.
yeah, bro. I think it's a great job by the UFC making this one highly entertaining. It should be a great fight, bro. Should end in probably a finish. But yeah, dude. I mean, we've seen Shara Bullet kind of jump on the scene. Hasn't really fought anybody worth note. But he's had some nice wins. Especially his last fight with the double spinning back fist. And then you look at a guy like MVP, who, yeah, he's 1-1 in the UFC, but he was very competitive. I mean, almost won the Ian Gary fight. And then we saw what Ian Gary just did against a guy like Shavkat, and then he obviously beats Holland. But like you said, bro, if you're just going to come in here and we're going to kickbox, I don't know how many guys I'm taking ahead of MVP in the
Yeah,
UFC. And it's really his speed. Like, I know he's an older guy, but his speed, he seems to be
like
faster than everyone he fights.
the fastest guy I've ever seen. Like people were saying Ian Gary, and as you mentioned, he went and did what he did against Shavkat. So like clearly Ian Gary is a very good fighter. But coming into that fight, like we were like, wow, this is kind of the way we're talking about this fight. We're like, this is striker's paradise. Like this is going to be a
Yeah.
great striking match, and it wasn't. Like MVP won all the exchanges. So you're right. This guy could not be faster. Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no, yeah. So I'm really interested in this one. I know that Shara Bullet is like a 2-1 favorite coming into Saturday, but bro, I'm gonna go with the underdog in this one. I'm gonna go with Michael Venom Page to get this one done. Um, and I'll go with MVP via
He's not.
I'll go with MVP via second round
Oh.
TKO in this fight. I think he's gonna have the speed advantage. The only thing is he is moving up to middleweight. He's not a big welterweight, I would say to begin with. I I don't know how that he.
Why is he moving up?
I don't get it, dude. I think the UFC just was looking for a reasonable opponent for Shara that made sense. I mean, I don't know, but I think he kind of just. It's tough because MVP don't really. I feel like he's a guy that he cares about this, but he don't really care to win. Like, I don't think he's worried about a title shot and all that stuff. So, but with that being said, I still am going to go with MVP to get it done here. I'm going to go with him via second round TKO. Hebs, over to you.
Yeah, no, I don't know. As you mentioned, it doesn't seem like you really can. Like I could see similar to Gary, like I could see MVP winning on the feet, and then like Bullet kind of just like making it ugly, holding him against the fence for dear life, and like kind of squeaking out a decision that way.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. The line. I think it's worth it at the price to take MVP. Um, but I'll go Shara Bullet just because like I think again at the points in their career they're at, like it seems to mean a little bit more to Shara Bullet. Speaking of being at an interesting point in your career, that's how you transition, ladies and gentlemen. Sergey Pavlovich, a guy who a year and a half ago he looked like the baddest man alive. Actually, a little less than a year and a half ago when he gets called up on short notice to fight Tom Aspinall. That was a pick'em fight. Um, he gets knocked out in a minute. The fight doesn't even really happen, right? That's kind of the trend when you fight Tom Aspinall. It's kind of over before it starts. Gets knocked out in a minute. Still, that doesn't really change the public perception of him that much. He goes on to fight old sparring partner Alexander Volkov. Big favorite in that fight. I think he's like minus 250. And he comes out and he gets fucking pieced up for 3 rounds. Gets absolutely dog walked. Now, who knows? So again, that was not very long ago. He was looked at as maybe the best heavyweight in the world because it certainly wasn't John Jones or Stipe Miocic. Now all of a sudden he's on a 2-fight skid, and he's got a lot of questions. He's fighting Jairzinho Rosenstruck, the dictionary definition of a gatekeeper. It doesn't really get much easier of a breakdown with Rosenstruck. He beats guys he's worse than, and he loses to guys that are better than him. There's really there's no gray area. He's got a lot of losses on his resume at this point, but like that's what a gatekeeper is, right? When you continue to beat the guys that are ranked below you, then eventually they have to put you back in there with someone ranked above you, and then he just loses that fight. So I've heard people say this is like, oh, this fight's not leaving the first round. This fight, blah, blah, blah. Someone's going to sleep. Has anyone watched Jairzinho Rosenstruck fight? Because like, that's not really the way he fights. He's like a more technical guy for heavyweight. He is a very good kickboxer for heavyweight. I mean, most of them don't have the hip mobility to like throw any sort of kick. He's got a nice jab, right? He does have power, but like not in a way that you think of for a heavyweight. I remember he has like 10 main events. He's always in like main event of fight nights. So like it was against like Augusto Sakai. That's like a little bit of a deep cut, but like it was maybe the most boring 4 minutes and 50 seconds of a fight you've ever seen. And then with like 10 seconds to go, he just like decided to go and he just knocked him out. So like I don't think the fight will go like that. Well, actually, let me. What do you think What do you make of this fight? Like, what do you think of this run for Sergey now? Like, I don't even want to talk about Jar. I really like Biggie Boy for whatever reason. Like, he just seems like a cool guy, but I don't really take him seriously as a contender at heavyweight.
Yeah, it's tough to take Jairzinho serious as a contender because, I mean, anytime he gets somewhere up in the rankings, he's going to have to run into a guy that has, if the guy has any wrestling, he's done. I think I could take him down, literally, as we saw time and time again. He just gets caught. Someone just tackles his leg on a double leg, and it's like he's never trained it before. It looks bad.
Him and MVP, dude, they can't spell wrestling.
At least MVP has like the wide base going. He can like get out of something sometimes. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think Sergey gets this one done, and I think he gets it done in the first. But I could see like with Sergey, and yeah, he had the loss to Aspinall, and then he got worked by Volkov, which was an impressive performance by Volkov. But a guy like Sergey, I just feel like he comes in there and he's trying to put the pressure on and land the shot as quickly as he can, type of thing. And yeah, it works for him, and it worked for him, especially on his run in the beginning. But at heavyweight, bro, you do that. You just go in there and kind of like eventually someone's gonna land a counter. And at heavyweight, I don't care who you are, you're gonna go out at some point. So like that's the only path. I mean, obviously, both of these guys, their path to victory is by KO, but I think I'm gonna go with Sergey to go in and get this one done early. But yeah, I think Jairzinho's chance is landing that counter and putting Sergey out. But I'm gonna go with Sergey to get it done here early. Uh,
But that's like, I feel like this is kind of the same as Volkov. Like Volkov, a much more technical striker. Obviously, he has, he's like the tallest guy, like very big reach advantage. Or actually, I don't. Sergey's got like a ridiculous reach somehow too. He looks like kind of a T-Rex arm guy, but um, I could see Jairzinho having some success, kind of like picking him apart a little bit. But I just got to back Sergey. Like even against Volkov, like it didn't seem like he was at any point like close to getting finished, like even though he was taking a lot of damage and he really had like no success in that fight. So
yeah,
man, I could see Jairzinho piecing him up a little bit, but like I don't know. I think when you lose two fights like that, like you got to be training like a madman right now, right? Like you can't lose three in a row. So yeah, man, I'm going with Sergey as well. I guess the only like what is it, first or second round knockout for him? That's like the only debate in a Sergey Pavlovich fight. So, but this guy was finishing everywhere. He was knocking guys out in like 30 seconds. He was like the Terminator there for a second. So, I'd like to see that. I still think he has a lot of good fights left in him. So, and he's a more exciting fighter to me than Jairzinho Rosenstruck. So, I'm rolling with Sergey. No disrespect to Biggie Boy. All right, UFC Fight Night Saudi Arabia coming up this Saturday. A day card. We're blessed again with a day card. Freaking love those. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, hit that subscribe button. We are back. Season over, as we said. So we got a lot of new stuff coming at you every week. Got some fun interviews coming up. Maybe some other tricks up our sleeve. But definitely tune in for that. Very excited to get back at it, and yeah, enjoy the fights this weekend. Comment who you got in the main card. Maybe we'll have a surprise for you. Definitely not, but
get those picks in on the comment.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
just the big three. Get the big three picks in. We have somebody get them all right. We might take care of you some way. We'll see.
3 for 3 with 3 big. I mean, maybe I'm not taking. He said it. I'm not taking care of you, but maybe he will. All right, all right.